Millionaire shocked when boy chooses cleaning lady over rich mother. The news rippled through the city like wildfire. Richard Thornton, a billionaire widower, was stunned and heartbroken as his 9-year-old son Gabriel turned away from every glamorous woman his fortune could lure. Not once, but time and time again. The curious part? None of these women was the beloved Helen, the loyal housekeeper who'd left the sprawling mansion at the edge of the glittering city streets. The headlines screamed mystery. "Boy rejects millionaire's dream mothers," they said. Everyone wondered, why would a finely dressed, brash kid in a tuxedo choose the humble woman who scrubbed floors and polished silver over a silver spoon mother figure with diamond earrings and silk smiles? Inside the mansion's gold-gilded walls, strange whispers circled. Richard paced the marbled hallways, his shoes echoing against ancient tapestries. His chest tightened every time he glanced at Gabriel's empty room. Silent, the glossy new caregiver with the practiced smile caught him off guard, and his refusal turned fierce and loud, like a storm roaring through a sunlit garden. At one meeting, a woman's temper cracked under pressure, shouting at the boy until tears spilled down his cheeks. Richard's hands trembled. His attempts to fix things collapsed in sparks of anger and frustration. The city's gossip buzzed louder. What's this rich man missing? Why is his son broken? But the mansion held its secrets tight. The truth was raw, buried beneath layers of grief. Desperation drove Richard to a therapist's glass office, where calm voices urged him to listen, to really listen. That's when he realized Gabriel wasn't just rejecting new faces. He was craving the kind of love that didn't need titles or money, something pure, unshakable. He missed Helen. Night after night, Richard stared at his phone, fingers hovering over Helen's number. What if their family was too broken? Then, one rainy evening, he dialed. His voice cracked, swallowed by silence on the other end. But Helen's soft hello was a lifeline. Richard heard the fragile hope there, the quiet heartbeat of a second chance. Gabriel's eyes brightened with a fragile spark the next morning, whispering Helen's name like a secret prayer. It wasn't a perfect fix, but a step toward healing. As Richard laid out the plans to welcome Helen back, the doorbell rang sharply downstairs. A visitor, unannounced and unexpected. A stranger's shadow flickered against the lavish curtains, carrying questions heavier than the mansion's walls. The air thickened. This wasn't over. What waited beyond that doorway? What old wounds and new desires would collide in the house, still learning how to breathe again? Richard's heart hammered, not just with hope, but fear. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss out on any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Richard's heart thudded heavily in his chest as he reached for the door. The sudden ring echoed through the mansion, causing a shiver to run down his spine. He exchanged a quick, nervous glance with Gabriel, whose eyes were wide and brimming with hopeful curiosity. Would it be Hele? With a deep breath, Richard turned the polished brass knob and opened the grand door. The wind whipped in, carrying with it an unexpected chill that cut through the warm air of the mansion. Standing there, framed by shadows, was a figure he recognized, but had never expected to see. "Mom?" Gabriel's voice quivered, shock rippling through the room like a wave crashing on the shore. Richard's heart stopped. The woman before them was not Helen. Not the familiar warmth, wrapped in soft laughter. No, this was Alice, the mother Richard thought he'd never see again. She had disappeared without a trace years ago, leaving behind only questions and pain. "Gabriel's sweetheart," Alice said, her voice barely above a whisper, eyes glistening with tears. "I missed you so much." A silence fell, thick and suffocating. Richard felt the ground shift beneath him. Everything he thought was true, the safety of their small world, the love they built in Helen's absence, cracked like fragile glass. He felt his chest tighten, breath hitching in disbelief. Gabriel's face fell, confusion swirling like a storm cloud. "But you're not supposed to be here," he stammered, stepping back as if Alice's very presence was a foreign entity, something dangerous. "You left. You chose to leave." Richard's mind raced. How could she just walk back in? The scandal of it all was suffocating. The whispers they had faced, the pity from friends and strangers alike, it all came rushing back, a flood of uncomfortable memories. And now, here was the architect of that pain, standing on his doorstep. Alice's expression shifted. The hope darkened as bitterness seeped in. "I had to leave, Richard. You didn't understand. I was suffocating. I did it for us," she defended herself, but certainty wavered. Richard's hands trembled, tension spiraling in the silence. "For us? We were raising our son, Alice? You left!" His anger simmered, a dangerous flame flickering. Gabriel stood frozen, caught in a whirlwind of emotions, torn between love for a mother he hardly remembered and the peace Helen had brought into their lives. The tension thickened, a heavy silence falling again. Then came the bombshell. A figure stepped from behind Alice, a young girl, maybe 12, with wide eyes that mirrored Gabriel's. "I'm Sophia, your sister," she announced, the words landing like heavy stone into the troubled waters of their family history. Gabriel blinked, mouth opening, but no words coming out. Richard felt hollow, shock running cold through his veins. A sister? All this time? It felt like the ground had vanished beneath their feet. Whispers bubbled up around them. Neighbors peeking through windows. Voices filled with gasps and questions. Richard staggered backward, struggling to catch his breath. Who was this unexpected sibling? What secrets lay buried beneath years of silence? Alice stepped inside, uninvited yet undeniable. "We need to talk, Richard," she insisted, her eyes fierce but filled with regret. And as Richard closed the door behind her, locking them in together, he realized this was just the beginning. Secrets were emerging from the shadows, threatening to unravel everything he thought he knew. The mansion felt alive with tension, waiting as old wounds reared their heads. What did this mean for Gabriel? For their family? As the walls of his carefully constructed world trembled under the weight of past betrayals, Richard knew they had stepped into a storm. Even the calmest days couldn't last forever. As Richard closed the door behind Alice and Sophia, a chilling tension clung to the air. He felt disoriented, caught in a tempest of emotions. Gabriel stayed silent, his face a canvas of confusion and hurt, his eyes darting between the two women, between a mother he tried to forget and a sister he never knew existed. "Can we sit?" Alice asked, her voice trembling as she gestured toward the grand sitting room. Richard nodded, though all he could think was that this couldn't be happening. Gabriel sat cross-legged on the lavish carpet, eyes wide, a hurricane of questions swirling inside him. Richard plopped down on the couch, the plush cushions barely comforting against the storm raging in his mind. "Why did you come back?" he demanded, standing firm. "Leave us alone, Alice." "You—" "But I had to," she pleaded, tears sparkling in her eyes. "I was scared. I thought you'd be better off without me." "Better off? You left. That's not what a mother does," Richard retorted, anger surging. The words hung heavy in the air, suffocating, until Sophia spoke up. "It's not just about Mom. It's about us, too." Her voice was small, but strong, echoing through the mansion like a hidden truth surfacing. Richard turned to her, unnerved by her presence. This young girl, carrying unwelcome news. What do you mean? Suddenly, the room shuddered under a weight of emotion. Gabriel's eyes were locked on Sophia, and for a second, Richard saw a flicker of recognition, a distant connection. Out of nowhere, a loud crash shattered the moment, a loud bang reverberating from somewhere deep within the house. Richard's heart raced. What was that? He shot up, panic clawing at him. Before he could reach for the door, the lights flickered, then dimmed. The unease in the air thickened. Then, silence. This silence bled into a deafening roar in Richard's ears, leaving only the rapid thud of his heart. Gabriel whimpered, "Dad, I'm scared." Richard turned back to the girls. Just as the lights snapped back on, but everything felt different. The glow illuminated Alice's face, and in that moment, a realization struck him. Her eyes weren't just filled with regret, they flickered with something darker, something that felt like guilt, like a burden that she carried from her past. Sophia took a deep breath, her expression suddenly serious. "There's something we need to tell you. Something about why I'm here." Before she could continue, a loud crash echoed again, vibrating through the floorboards. Richard jumped, adrenaline kicking in. "Stay here," he commanded, rushing to the hallway, curiosity and dread intertwining. He reached the wide entrance, breathless when he spotted a figure lurking in the shadows beyond the front door. His blood ran cold. It was a man, holding something glimmering in his hand, a sinister smile creeping across his face. "What's going on?" Richard shouted, his voice breaking through the panic. "Who are you?" The man stepped closer, and the light caught something, a glint of metal. Richard squinted, heart racing, when a haunting realization struck him. The man looked eerily similar to Alice. "Welcome home," the stranger said, voice dripping with mockery. "You thought you could escape the past, Richard, but it always finds a way back." Fear clutched at Richard's throat as the pieces began to shift like a dangerous puzzle. This wasn't just about Alice returning. This was about something far bigger, deeper. Tension hung like a dark cloud, and a feeling of dread crawled under Richard's skin. "Who are you?" Richard croaked, stepping back, instinctively shielding the kids behind him. And as the man stepped into the light, the truth spread like poison in the air. Ready to redefine everything Richard thought he knew. As the weight of history began to unravel, Richard knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. Richard's heart raced as he faced the intruder, the stranger with that unsettling smile. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken words, waiting to be unleashed. He struggled to gather his thoughts, pushing past the wave of panic. "Who are you?" Richard shouted again, his voice trembling but firm. "This is quite the family reunion, isn't it?" the man said, stepping into the light, revealing features that twisted Richard's stomach. There was a striking resemblance to Alice. "What do you want?" Gabriel whimpered, clutching Richard's leg, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Just a little chat," the man replied, his focus landing on Alice. "I've missed you, dear sister." "Sister?" Richard's mind recoiled. This was a rabbit hole he never expected to fall down. Alice's face went pale under the weight of that revelation, thoughts racing behind her eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed, throwing caution to the wind. "I couldn't let you forget, could I?" the man drawled, crossing his arms, a wicked grin stretching across his face. "You owe me a lot, and I'm here to collect." Gabriel's grip tightened, a sense of dread pooling in Richard's gut. This was no innocent visit. It felt like a nightmare unraveling. "What do you mean?" Richard pressed, desperation in his voice. "What are you talking about?" "Let's just say our little family has some dark secrets." The man took a step closer. "Did you really believe Alice just walked away? She was trying to escape something much worse than you realize." The weight of his word. The man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the grand hallway. "Oh, It's way too late for that, sweet sister. What kind of mother would leave her son in the dark? Richard felt a wave of nausea hit him harder, mingling with fury. "Who are you?" he shouted again, trying to regain control, desperate to protect his son. "I'm Vincent," he said, grinning like a predator. "And I'm here to settle the past. That mansion, those riches, they hold secrets that could destroy everything you've built." "Secrets?" Richard scoffed. "You think you can just march in and take my family apart?" But Vincent's laughter felt ominous, folding around them like fog. "You still don't get it, do you? It's already unraveling, all of it. And Alice, she knows what I'm talking about. The truth will set you free, they say. But this one, it'll crush you." Richard's heart raced, each beat loud enough to drown out the fear creeping through the room. "Enough," he barked, stepping forward defiantly. "We're done with this. You want something? You can leave." Gabriel squeezed Richard's leg, eyes darting between the adults. "Dad, I'm scared. What's going on?" In that moment, a sudden crash echoed from the hallway, louder this time. Richard's heart stumbled as he turned, fear slicing through him like ice. "Gabriel, stay behind me." When he looked back, Vincent was grinning wider, still watching Alice. "Let's see how tough you are when your carefully built world starts to tumble down." One flick, one whisper. Richard blinked, then a flash of light caught his eye, something glimmering dangerously in Vincent's hand. It was a small object, a key? The realization dawned on him, a key to a past he thought was buried. "What do you have there?" Richard demanded, voice low, despair creeping in. Vincent's smile faded slightly, replaced with something darker. "Oh, just the key to unlock the real family secrets." "Are you ready to hear what Alice did?" And just as he finished his words, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. Richard's pulse raced, confusion and fear crashing together. He pushed through the shadows, adrenaline pumping in his veins. "Alice? What's going on? What did you do?" A loud crash, followed by a desperate scream, shattered the stillness, and Richard's breath caught in his throat. Then, silence. What had just happened? Richard felt every nerve in his body clamoring for answers as shadows mingled around them. Everything felt different now. Relationships and memories twisted like branches in a storm. His world threatened to implode. "What's happening?" Gabriel's voice trembled, breaking the silence. Richard hesitated, uncertainty creeping in. He could sense that they were about to step onto ground that would change everything. Vincent's voice cut through the darkness, smooth and mocking. "Welcome to the truth, Richard. I hope you're ready." And in that moment, the air thickened, alive with the weight of secrets and unspoken lies. Leaving Richard questioning everything he thought he knew. Richard's heart raced as he faced the intruder, the stranger with that unsettling smile. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken words, waiting to be unleashed. He struggled to gather his thoughts, pushing past the wave of panic. "Who are you?" Richard shouted again, his voice trembling but firm. "This is quite the family reunion, isn't it?" The man said, stepping into the light, revealing features that twisted Richard's stomach. There was a striking resemblance to Alice. "What do you want?" Gabriel whimpered, clutching Richard's leg, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Just a little chat," the man replied, his focus landing on Alice. "I've missed you, dear sister." Sister? Richard's mind recoiled. This was a rabbit hole he never expected to fall down. Alice's face went pale under the weight of that revelation, thoughts racing behind her eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed, throwing caution to the wind. "I couldn't let you forget, could I?" the man drawled, crossing his arms, a wicked grin stretching across his face. "You owe me a lot, and I'm here to collect." Gabriel's grip tightened, a sense of dread pooling in Richard's gut. This was no innocent visit. It felt like a nightmare unraveling. "What do you mean?" Richard pressed, desperation in his voice. "What are you talking about?" "Let's just say our little family has some dark secrets." The man took a step closer. "Did you really believe Alice just walked away?" "She was trying to escape something much worse than you realize." The weight of his words hung thick in the air, dragging a deep breath from Richard's lungs. Alice shook her head, eyes darting around like caged birds. "Stop it! You're scaring him." "Scaring him?" The man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the grand hallway. "Oh, it's way too late for that, sweet sister. What kind of mother would leave her son in the dark?" Richard felt a wave of nausea hit him harder, mingling with fury. "Who are you?" he shouted again, trying to regain control, desperate to protect his son. "I'm Vincent," he said, grinning like a predator, "and I'm here to settle the past. That mansion, those riches, they hold secrets that could destroy everything you've built." "Secrets," Richard scoffed. "You think you can just march in and take my family apart?" But Vincent's laughter felt ominous, folding around them like fog. "You still don't get it, do you? It's already unraveling. All of it. And Alice, she knows what I'm talking about. The truth will set you free, they say. But this one, it'll crush you." Richard's heart raced, each beat loud enough to drown out the fear creeping through the room. "Enough!" he barked, stepping forward defiantly. "We're done with this. You want something? You can leave." Gabriel squeezed Richard's leg, eyes darting between the adults. "Dad, I'm scared. What's going on?" In that moment, a sudden crash echoed from the hallway, louder this time. Richard's heart stumbled as he turned, fear slicing through him like ice. "Gabriel, stay behind me." When he looked back, Vincent was grinning wider, still watching Alice. "Let's see how tough you are when your carefully built world starts to tumble down." One flick, one whisper. Richard blinked, then a flash of light caught his eye, something glimmering dangerously in Vincent's hand. It was a small object. A key? The realization dawned on him. A key to a past he thought was buried. "What do you have there?" Richard demanded, voice low, despair creeping in. Vincent's smile faded slightly, replaced with something darker. "Oh, just the key to unlock the real family secrets. Are you ready to hear what Alice did?" And just as he finished his words, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. Richard's pulse raced, confusion and fear crashing together. In that brief moment of chaos, a low rumble echoed, vibrating through the very foundation of the mansion. Richard felt it in his bones. "Dad, what's happening?" Gabriel's voice trembled, panic creeping into his words. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light pierced that shadowy veil, illuminating the room as if a lightning bolt had struck. Richard shielded his eyes, heart hammering. When he dared to open them, everything had changed. Alice stood rigid, her face an unsettling mixture of shock and horror. Vincent, too, was gaping, his grin wiped away. Slowly, Richard turned to see what caused their sudden shift. Gabriel was frozen in place, eyes wide, pointing behind Richard. "Dad, look!" And there it was, a figure appearing from the shadows. But this figure was different, taller, more menacing. Dressed in dark clothing that absorbed the light, the stranger stepped into view, eyes shimmering like molten steel. "Sarah?" Richard's voice dropped to a whisper. The name slipped from his lips like ice. The figure smiled eerily, the kind of smile that felt familiar yet full of malice. "Miss me?" Richard staggered back, heart pounding. Sarah, his estranged sister, thought lost forever after a family feud. The air crackled with tension, whispers of betrayal and secrets. Vincent's demeanor shifted, fear mixing with recognition. "Welcome to the reunion," Sarah said, voice smooth yet cold. ready to discuss family business. Suddenly, the walls felt like they were closing in. The past wasn't just knocking, it was crashing through the door, ready to devour everything. Richard's mind reeled, body trembling. The pieces he thought were finally fitting together were scattering once again. In that moment, the truth loomed, darker than any of them could imagine. What had happened between families? What twisted histories bound them all together? Richard was trapped at the center of it, and in that instant, he knew nothing would ever be the same again. "Dad," Gabriel's voice broke through the chaos, trembling. "What does this mean?" As Richard faced Sarah, confusion and dread coiling like a serpent in his chest, he realized he was stepping into a storm born from blood and secrets. What new nightmares lurked here? The questions hung heavy in the air, echoing down the hall as the shadows loomed larger around them. Richard's heart raced as he faced Sarah, the past crashing over him like a relentless wave. He swallowed hard, breathing deep, trying to wrap his mind around the reality of the moment. This was no ordinary family reunion. It felt like a reckoning. "Sarah, how can you be here?" he stammered, searching her eyes for the sister he used to know, the bond now so twisted and alien. "I told you," she said, her smile wide but cold. The air felt thick, oppressive with unspoken truths. Gabriel's small hand tightened around Richard's leg, a fragile anchor in the storm of emotions. "Dad, what's happening?" Gabriel's voice trembled, his innocence stolen by the shadows looming over them. Vincent stepped forward, eyes glinting like a predator's. "You have no idea what family secrets run deep, do you, Richard? It's a tangled web, one that Alice knows all too well." Richard's frustration bubbled, boiling over. "Stop talking in riddles. What do you mean?" But before Vincent could respond, the lights flickered violently again, momentarily dimming the scene. A chilling gust swept through the mansion, causing Richard to shudder. It was as if the house itself was reacting to the chaos. Suddenly, the front door burst open, with a deafening crash. They all turned, wide-eyed, and Richard instinctively moved to shield Gabriel. He was so focused on protecting his son that he didn't see what was coming next. From the doorway stepped a figure cloaked in darkness, a hood obscuring their face. The cold gust pushed forward, sending a shockwave through the room. In that instant, Richard felt a chill in his bones, something beyond just fear. "Leave them alone!" A fierce voice rang out, slicing through the tension like a knife. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a young woman with fierce eyes. "Lucy?" Richard's voice dropped to a whisper, stunned into silence. Her presence crackled in the air, fierce and undeniable. Lucy, the half-sister he thought lost in the chaos of family fires. "You shouldn't be here," Alice gasped, eyes darting between her children, fear etched deep within her. Lucy took a step forward. "You think you've all gotten away with everything? You think I wouldn't come back to put an end to this?" The room was thick with confusion and shock. Vincent's smirk faded slightly, replaced by something darker. "Lucy, you were supposed to stay away. You don't understand what you're stepping into." "I understand more than you think," Lucy shot back, her voice fierce. "Family doesn't just let secrets die, Vincent. They fester." Richard's mind raced, trying to piece this family puzzle together. A third sister? His thoughts crashed like storm waves, threatening to drown him. "Wait, what secrets?" Richard demanded, desperation clawing at the edges. "What are you talking about?" As Lucy opened her mouth to respond, the lights flickered again, plunging them back into darkness. A sharp gasp pierced the air. A sound of horror ripped from Alice's throat. Something monumental was happening. With a sudden, blinding light, the truth shot through the living room like a bolt of lightning. "I know you're all connected, but not in the way you think," Lucy shouted, revealing a glint of something in her hand. A piece of paper. "You're not just siblings. You're pawns in a much larger game." "What game?" Richard shouted, stricken by the rush of dread that spilled all around them. "Remember the fire?" she posed, words sharp and fierce. "The one at the old house? It wasn't just an accident. It was an orchestrated betrayal. A betrayal that took someone from us." As she said it, the very air seemed to crackle with tension, shocking revelation electrifying their hearts and minds. "Betrayal?" Richard whispered, breathless, suddenly trapped in a web of ancient, haunting secrets he didn't know existed. The shadows deepened, twisting everything Richard believed. Everything he knew slipped through his fingers like grains of sand. And as the storm within the mansion swirled, he realized the truth was darker and more complicated than any of them could grasp. In that instant, Richard understood. This wasn't just about reconciliation. It was about survival. Secrets were rising, and they were dangerous. What would this mean for his family, now weaving together lives that had meant to stay apart? As Lucy raised the piece of paper, the lights flickered back to life, illuminating her determined face, ready to reveal everything. Yet in that moment, the unexpected screech of tires outside shattered their fragile focus. Richard's world spun as fear collided with confusion again. What now? Each question exploded like fireworks in his head. But one thing was certain. This storm was far from over, and the waves of truth were ready to crash down, changing everything once more. Richard's mind was racing. The revelation of Lucy's presence sent shockwaves through his already fractured family. A look of disbelief crested on Gabriel's pale face, while Vincent studied Lucy with an unsettling mix of interest and predatory instinct. "What do you mean, orchestrated betrayal?" Richard pressed, desperation clawing at his voice. "What kind of betrayal?" Lucy stepped closer, raising the piece of paper she held. "This is why I came back. You all need to know what really happened that night at the old house." Richard's heart thumped in his chest, feeling heavy. The weight of unspoken truths threatened to crush him. "Tell me, Lucy, please." Before she could respond, the sound of screeching tires tore through the tension. A vehicle skidded to a halt outside, its horn blaring like a wild animal. Richard turned toward the noise, feeling a chill crawl up his spine. "Who's out there?" Gabriel whispered, eyes wide. Vincent exchanged a knowing glance with Lucy, his confidence seeming to waver just slightly. "This isn't over yet," he said, the edge of warning creeping into his tone. And then, with a jolt, the front door burst open again. The wind rushed in, carrying an icy gust that snuffed out the flickering lights. The room was plunged into darkness once more. Panic gripped Richard's throat. "Stay close," he shouted, instinctively pulling Gabriel behind him. But the shadows shifted, and out of the darkness stepped a figure, tall, imposing. The faint light returned, revealing a woman with wild, dark hair and eyes that shimmered like knives. "Mom?" Gabriel's voice was barely a whisper. Richard's stomach dropped. It wasn't Alice. It wasn't anyone he recognized. "Who are you?" Richard demanded, stepping forward protectively. The woman grinned, and Richard felt an icy dagger twist in his gut. It was a smile that held too many secrets. "You don't remember me, do you, Richard?" she crooned, stepping into the light like a ghost reborn. "Get away from my son!" Richard barked, raising his hands. But the woman kept her fierce gaze locked on Gabriel, kneeling to his level. "Oh, darling, I've missed you," she purred, reaching out. "No," Richard yelled, heart pounding. "Don't touch him." "Why do you think I'm here?" she said, her voice dripping with malice. "To reclaim what's mine." You're not his mother," Richard stammered, the realization hitting him like a punch. "You can't be." "I am," she hissed, her eyes narrowing, and in that moment, Richard felt everything shift beneath him. The darkness thickened, pressing in. "No!" he shouted, forcing the panic down. You're lying. Well, the truth is a funny thing. She coiled back, leaning closer, a cruel smile creeping across her lips. But I'm here now, and you'll have to face the music. The real story about that night isn't what you think, Richard. And like a single spark igniting dry grass, a wave of horror rippled through the room. The atmosphere crackled with the weight of impending doom, swirling with the essence of hidden truths, heartbreak, and betrayal. Richard felt his knees tremble, the ground beneath him shifting. "What are you saying?" he gasped. "What happened?" The woman smirked, standing tall now, reveling in the chaos she had unleashed. "Your precious memories weren't what you thought, Richard. The fire wasn't an accident. It was a cover-up, and your mother didn't just leave. She was taken." In that instant, reality fractured like glass, every piece of his world shattered, refracting the light of memories into horrifying shapes. Gabriel whimpered, squeezing Richard's leg tighter. "Dad, what does she mean?" Silence descended like a heavy fog, wrapping around them, stifling words, emotions, hope. And as Richard processed this fresh horror, the woman stepped even closer, her words dripping with venom. "You're standing at the edge of something much darker than you ever imagined. The truth is out there, and it's hungry." As her words hung in the air, Richard felt a low rumble beneath his feet. But this time it wasn't just fear rising. It was a reckoning. Something horrid stirred within the heart of their twisted lineage. The truth was clawing its way to the surface, ready to explode. In that instant, Richard realized they were all standing on the brink of a precipice, a storm building beyond comprehension. And as the world around them began to shake, the very foundation of his life threatened to crumble. Richard was left with one harrowing question. Would they survive what was coming next? The air felt charged with tension, each heartbeat echoing Richard's panic. The woman's icy words ripped through the room, and he gripped Gabriel tighter, afraid of what might spill out. "What do you mean the fire wasn't an accident?" Richard's voice cracked, desperation racing through him. He could feel the weight of everyone's stares, the unwelcome attention closing in. "Let me break it down for you," the woman purred, a smirk playing on her lips. "That night, you were all supposed to be there, but someone wanted you gone. They meant to erase our entire family." Richard shook his head, anger mingling with dread. "You don't get to rewrite history." "Oh, but I can," she shot back, her eyes gleaming with a cruel light. And then, out of nowhere, the lights flickered again, and a deafening crash sent a surge of panic through the room. Richard turned just in time to see a shadow darting past the window. Something or someone was outside. "Stay inside," he yelled, dread rippling through him. But it wasn't finished. From behind him, Gabriel shrieked, "Dad, look!" Richard spun back, and in the blink of an eye, everything shifted. A loud bang echoed. The front door slammed open, revealing a dark form outlined against the night. It was a man, breathless and wild-eyed. "Get down!" he shouted, rushing in as if the world behind him was collapsing. "Who are you?" Richard demanded, his heart thumping as he instinctively shielded Gabriel. I'm here to save you," the man gasped, stumbling toward them. Before Richard could ask further, the room exploded with sound. A low rumble turned into a roar. A thick, suffocating smoke billowed in, hurtling toward them like a raging beast. "Run!" Richard roared, pulling Gabriel close. But as they burst toward the back door, the man gripped Richard's arm. "You don't understand. It's coming for you all. You have to know the truth before it's too late." "What truth?" Richard screamed over the chaos. "The fire. It was a setup. Your mother isn't who you think she is. But Richard didn't have time to listen. He pushed through the smoke, heart pounding, dragging Gabriel behind him. They stumbled outside into the cool air, gasping for breath. The chaos was everywhere. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous bang, cutting off the man's voice. "Dad, where's Lucy?" Gabriel cried. The world twisted inside Richard. He turned, scanning the porch, but Lucy was gone, vanished into thin air. "Lucy!" he shouted, fear clawing at his throat. The man emerged behind them, his eyes wide in fear. "It's too late. We need to leave now, before they come back." "Who are they?" Richard demanded, trying to make sense of the chaos. Before the man could respond, a piercing scream echoed from inside the mansion. It sent chills racing down Richard's spine. "We can't go back in there." But the man grabbed Richard's shoulder, urgency spilling from him. "It's your family. The truth is buried in that house, but it's not safe anymore. We have to go, now." Just then, a shadow darted past the window again. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Richard's heart raced. What deep, twisted truth lay hidden in those walls? "Wait!" Richard shouted, as the man began to pull them towards the car. "What did you mean about my mother? What truth?" With a frantic glance back, the man whispered urgently, "Your mother wasn't who you thought she was. She was the one orchestrating it all. She's not just part of it. She's at the center of it." And just like that, the world spun. The real nightmare was not just outside, but within their very hearts, waiting to be uncovered. As everything fell apart, Richard knew one thing. Nothing would ever feel safe again. Not with that truth haunting him. What had his life been built on? The past echoed in his ears, begging for confrontation. Desperation flared, urging him to face it all. But what awaited him when he went back into that house? Would they find freedom or something much worse? As they rushed away, Richard could only wonder. A storm was coming, and there would be no shelter from the truth. As Richard stumbled away from the house, the air around him felt thick with dread. He glanced behind at the man, who had claimed to be there to save them, and felt a swirling mix of confusion and fear. He was so overwhelmed that he only just caught the hints of panic flooding from the others. "Get in the car," the man urged, his eyes darting back toward the mansion. "We have to go, now. We have to go. Why do you know this?" Richard shouted, holding firm to Gabriel's hand, but uncertainty gnawed at him. "I'm sorry. I'll explain everything, but we don't have time." The man pushed them toward his beat-up SUV, the engine growling like an angry animal. Richard hesitated, torn between the need to escape and the urge to uncover the truth in that house. "What about Lucy? Is she okay?" Before the man could respond, a piercing scream erupted from inside the mansion. Every nerve in Richard's body jolted as he turned to look, heart thudding with terror. "Lucy!" he shouted, desperation clawing at him. He couldn't lose her again. Not like this. Not when everything was finally coming to light. "Richard, stop!" The man grabbed his arm, panic on his face. "Trust me, it's not safe for anyone." But Richard couldn't hear him over the deafening roar of chaos echoing in his mind. "We can't leave her," he yelled, pulling free and racing back toward the house, ignoring the man's protests. As he reached the door, a crack of thunder boomed, shaking the ground beneath him. The wind howled, swirling dust and debris around in a chaotic dance. He hesitated for a split second, blood rushing in his ears, when suddenly, a flash of light erupted from inside the mansion, illuminating the front of the house in a blinding glow. Richard shielded his eyes, feeling dread curl around his spine like a serpent. Was it the fire? "Lucy!" he screamed into the void, voice breaking. Then, just as quickly as it came, the light disappeared, leaving only darkness. Richard felt his heart seize. He pushed through the door, the wood splintering as he forced it open. Inside, the smoke billowed like ghosts, swirling and choking the air. "Lucy!" he cried, his shout echoing off the walls. But all he could see were shadows dancing, twisting in the dim light. Somewhere in the chaos, he heard the man's voice, shouting behind him, warning him. Suddenly, a shape leapt from the darkness. It collided with him, knocking Richard to the ground. He gasped, drawing a mixture of fear and surprise. "Richard, what are you doing?" It was Alice, her face pale and glistening with sweat. She had reappeared, panting and wild-eyed. "You shouldn't be here." "Alice, where's Lucy?" His voice trembled, urgency spilling over him. "Lucy, she—" Alice faltered, fear etched into her features. Just then the ground shook again, more violently, furniture shuddering against the floor. The very foundation of their lives began to tremble, and that's when he saw it, a flicker from the corner of his eye. The figure of a man loomed in the shadows just beyond his reach. "Stop this, Alice!" Richard shouted, grasping her arm. "What are you hiding?" Then, in a split second that felt like a lifetime, the lights flickered back on. The figure stepped fully into view, and Richard felt his heart drop into his stomach. It was Vincent, but he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was Lucy, her eyes wide, lips pressed tight. "What are you doing?" Richard gasped, shock rippling through him. "I'm sorry, Richard," Lucy said, her voice trembling. But it was the look in her eyes that hit him hardest. It wasn't just concern, it was fear. "We have to tell you something now." "Tell me what?" Richard's voice cracked. But before anyone could respond, a loud clap of thunder shook the house again, and a violent crash came from outside. The sounds of sirens wailed in the distance, an echo of the chaos surrounding them. "Lucy!" Richard cried out, desperate to reach her. But suddenly, the ground beneath them shook violently, and then it happened. Everything went black. When Richard came to, he was outside, sprawled across the grass. His head throbbed. The pungent scent of smoke filled his nostrils. He blinked, frantic. "Gabriel!" He scrambled up, eyes darting around, but everything had changed. The mansion loomed behind him, flames licking at the windows, framing the horror surrounding them. Then his gaze landed on Lucy. She stood there, her expression a mix of pain and resolution. "I'm so sorry, Richard," she whispered, and he felt the ground break beneath him. "Why are you saying that? What's happening?" His heart raced, the fear spreading like wildfire. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I was chosen," she hesitated, tears filling her eyes. "I'm not just your sister. I was sent to keep you from finding out the truth." All the air rushed from Richard's lungs. Sent by who? But her answer was drowned out by a deafening roar as flames engulfed the mansion behind them, consuming everything he thought he knew. And at that moment, as desperation clawed at his insides, Richard realized that everything he had built, every bond he thought unbreakable, was woven into a web darker than he could imagine. The truth was far more terrifying than he had ever considered. And as the fire crackled and the world crumbled around them, Richard felt the weight of betrayal, a betrayal that would forever alter the course of their lives, leaving them tangled in a nightmare that had only just begun. The fire roared behind them, flames licking at the sky like hungry spirits. Richard felt the heat on his back, and it stirred something wild within him. He pulled Gabriel closer, desperately trying to shield him from the chaos. "We have to get out of here." "I can't lay. She'll find us later," Alice urged, her voice breaking, fear shining in her eyes. "We can't be caught in the blaze." But Lucy's voice pierced through the smoke, tears mixing with the soot on her face. "You have to trust me, Richard." She stumbled forward, pulling Richard's attention. "I was trying to protect you, all of you. But the truth, it can't stay buried." "Then tell me," he demanded, trembling with urgency. "What do I need to know?" Before she could answer, the ground beneath them shook violently, pieces of the mansion crumbling around them. Richard could feel the heat creeping closer. The suffocating smoke was curling into the air like a sinister hand reaching for them. "Let's go," the man shouted, grabbing Richard's shoulder, shoving them toward the car. "Now!" With one last glance back at Lucy, Richard sprinted away, pulling Gabriel along as darkness and flames blurred behind him. Each step felt like a betrayal, but the instinct to survive overwhelmed every other feeling. They tumbled into the car, and the man punched the gas. The tires screeched as they barreled away from the chaos, leaving the mansion to its fate. In the rear-view mirror, he saw the flames rising higher, swallowing their past. Gabriel whimpered, shaking with fear. "Mom, where's Lucy?" "I don't know," Richard said through gritted teeth, heart aching. The weight of uncertainty crushed him, but then he glanced at Alice. Her face glowed with resolution despite the fear. "We'll figure it out," she assured, her voice steadier than before. "But we need to confront the truth together. The fire is just the start of it, Richard." As they drove further away from the burning remnants of their home, Richard felt a strange sense of camaraderie building, an unspoken pact forming. They had each other, and that had to mean something. "We need to come to terms with everything," Alice said, casting a glance at Richard. "Those secrets don't just disappear." "I know," Richard replied, the weight of his acceptance settling hard in his chest. "But we can't do it alone. We're going to need each other more than ever." There was a silence as they all processed the magnitude of what had just happened. Each of their lives had been reduced to a single truth. They were survivors, scarred and drawn together by the flames of their past. But even as they drove on, the question loomed large. What else would they uncover? What dark truths lurked beyond the flames? As the landscape blurred by, Richard glanced at the drumming rain against the windshield, feeling an undeniable surge of resolve. They would confront the secrets, lay everything bare, and find a way to move forward together. The road stretched ahead, winding into the unknown, but as long as they faced it together, there was hope, flickering but real. And just as he turned back to the others, determination sparking within, the screen went dark. If you enjoyed this wild ride, you must subscribe now to stay tuned for the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us bring you more incredible tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Your thoughts matter. And don't wait one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this ending. Only true fans understand the